Welcome back to MCNEW Podcast. I'm MCNEW, and today I'm going to be doing a commentary or a police officer's my perspective breakdown on the shoplifting incident that occurred in Canton, Ohio a couple of weeks ago, where the suspect pulled a gun on the officer in the loss prevention office there at the Walmart. And so this was one of the things I was hoping to do more frequently as I search for things to talk about on the show. And so that's the point of this. You might be wondering why I've picked something that's a couple weeks old. It's not fresh. It's not good new news, but it is something interesting. I have got people have asked me for my input or comments on what happened in this incident. And so even though it's old, I think it's worthy. My wife in particular found this interesting. She after I had seen it myself, she came and asked if I had seen it. She had some questions. And so, and just jumping way ahead in the video, we both agree that the loss prevention guy here, like my first instinct when I watched the video was like, dang, that guy is a hero. And whether he saved the officer's life or not, I won't weigh in on, but he very likely saved the suspect's life by intervening. The officer probably would have smoked him. And so, just spoiler alert there. From my 2 cents. So the way I'll start is just setting up the scene. If you're listening and not watching, I encourage you to go watch the video. It's all over YouTube and the internet. You've probably already seen it. And it's Canton, Ohio, shoplifter pulls gun at Walmart on police officer. And so just, I've got some notes here with the date, December 18th. December 18th is when it happened. And so let me set up the scene and then we'll watch the video. Right off the bat, when I watched this video, what caught my eye, probably within, when it was viral back a couple weeks ago, was how familiar this scene is. If you have any police officer with a Walmart in their jurisdiction recognizes this scene, the room maybe will look different, and not much. They all look really similar. And so any officer with a Walmart in their jurisdiction, this felt very familiar to them because at least in our jurisdiction, we've got a couple of Walmarts. It's a really common call to respond to a shoplifter detained at a Walmart. And so based on that, just let me set the scene from my perspective. And so what you will often find when you get to the Walmart is loss prevention employees who are buzzing around. And so it, like anywhere, it can be hit or miss on their experience, their professionalism, but largely, I find these individuals to be very professional. They know what you need. They've done this many times. And so when you arrive as a police officer, you are often faced with someone who's being detained by them. And usually, most of the time, they are cooperative, sitting on a bench or a chair or whatever the case. And the loss prevention officers are downloading video. They're writing or preparing statements. They are collecting totals, ringing up the merchandise that was recovered from the suspects to get you the amount that was stolen. And so they are buzzing around doing all of that. And so that's what I see in this video is a couple of people being detained and loss prevention buzzing around. And so let me just touch on, the different ways in my jurisdiction a shoplifting call might come in and what that response might look like. And so a couple of real familiar ways that it can happen is loss prevention will call and into the non-emergency or 911 or whatever in our jurisdiction, often just the non-emergency, and report that they have a couple or one shoplifter in custody. And so what that looked like from their stance was they've made some observations. They've maybe followed someone physically through a store or on camera. And after the suspects exit the store, they make contact. The suspects are cooperative. Suspects are cooperative. They agree to come back to the loss prevention office. And it's been a while since I responded because I don't respond to calls anymore. But if my memory is correct, they don't always call. There's a threshold where they'll call, or circumstantially they'll call sometimes. And one of those circumstances will be if the people have been previously trespassed or if they're known shoplifters. But I know that sometimes they just pursue a civil remedy and they don't call at all. And so in this case that we're talking about, they obviously did. And in all the cases we respond to as police officers, they've called us, obviously. And so that's one kind of set of circumstances where they'll call, where they observe a shoplift, they contact outside, the suspects come back in cooperatively. Another instance will be, and it's less common, but it does happen on a pretty regular basis, is they'll have someone in the store for just hour or hours, and they'll call the non-emergency and say, hey, we have a guy or gal in here who's just been concealing items in a backpack or on their person or filling a shopping cart for hours, and we think they're getting ready to leave. And so they'll sometimes proactively, preemptively call us to make contact as a suspect is exiting. And again, that depends on the circumstances. Maybe it's someone they know from a previous shoplift, or maybe they've been unable to detain them in the parking lot and they've shoplifted a few times and they're hoping the police can help them. Because these loss prevention professionals, a lot of times they will have in good intel on, here's some previous cases where we've observed them stealing, but we couldn't get them detained, and so here's the evidence from those cases, and so they're pretty sharp. And so, anyways, that just sets the stage for what I see here. Looks very much like every cooperative shoplifter, quote unquote cooperative shoplifter I've ever encountered at a Walmart. This all just looks very familiar. So the next thing you notice is that the body-worn camera capturing the video is stationary. And so have had people ask me that, why is the camera stationary? And so the short answer, and I don't know why, and maybe the information's out there, but I can speculate, sometimes in this setting or in an interview room setting or in a stationary environment where we're going to do an interview with suspects or even witnesses for that matter, the officer, especially if the officer is going to be moving around a lot, will take the camera off and set it on the table. And so that it's capturing a steady, solid camera angle. And so that to me looks like what this is. It's obviously a body-worn camera. It has the Motorola tag at the top. My jurisdiction uses these cameras. And so I recognize the banner, the BWC tag in the top right. I recognize that. And I got the video right over here. And so I recognize all of that, and so that is my best guess on why the camera is stationary, and I'm probably right on that one. And so, checking my notes here, the next thing I've been asked is, why weren't they handcuffed? And so, not knowing everything the officer knew and not knowing their procedures, what I'll say is I have seen officers arrive at a shoplifting report depending on the information and go straight to handcuffs. I've seen them arrive and wait to go to handcuffs. And the short answer is sometimes there's investigation to be done, and some officers will be doing it differently than others. And so if you get a lot of information right up the bat and you meet the loss prevention officer at the door, you may walk in and go straight to handcuffs. If you get any indication at all that they're being uncooperative, you may go straight to handcuffs. And so there's a lot of factors that go into why you would go into handcuffing. And so some of those factors, just speaking generally, is we go to handcuffs when someone is under arrest, when we have probable cause for their arrest. And another time would be to detain them based on the circumstances during an investigative detention, a Terry stop. Whatever the case, it could have been right to do handcuffs right away, and it just as likely could have been okay to wait while he collected a little bit more information. Again, just based on hundreds of responses to Walmart for shoplifts, them not being in handcuffs was not a great surprise to me. So then the question I was asked, and there's lots of information, and I suppose there's probably people who know even more. So I'm just speculating. But why weren't they frisked? And what I read was, and what I saw in reports was that there was a search, there was a frisk, and it got missed. And that just happens. It shouldn't happen, and it doesn't have to happen, but you see it happen. Every officer has missed something, whether it's a small bag of dope in a watch pocket or, worst case scenario here, what got missed was a gun. And so I don't know anything about this officer, and the video in this case starts, right before the gun comes out. And so I have no idea what the frisk or the search looked like. And that video might be out there. But what you know is that sometimes that happens. And so it's a good reminder for us to do if we're gonna do a frisk, do a good frisk. If we're gonna do a search, do an academy search where you are just pulling every pocket inside out, and every dime, nickel, and Tic Tac in their pocket is out in a Ziploc bag. And so it's just a good reminder, if we're gonna do it right. And so I don't know what this guy's looked like, so I'm not being harsh against him. It's just a good reminder that the thing you miss might be a gun. And so then I guess what we'll do now is let's watch the video, and then we'll come back to here. So like I said, here's our setup. We have the detained shoplifters, an all too familiar scene. You have him, looks like he's arguing with loss prevention. Why am I being detained? The officer's obviously sitting there right next to the body cam. Pause right there for a second. So you have the stationary camera, like I described in the beginning, the familiar scene of the loss prevention people buzzing around, plain clothes. You got the well-dressed guy in the shirt and tie, and so just people everywhere. You have her and him sitting on the bench. You got her junk sitting there, probably keys on a lanyard, stuff like that. Maybe that's someone else's, but this is just the scene I was describing. Just very familiar. You have his posture facing away. In hindsight, knowing what we know, is he guarding of that bag? Is his body language telling us that he's trying to hide something? Maybe in hindsight we know that, but also he's sitting like a slouch. And so what we can probably guess now that we know he's about to pull a pistol out is that he was probably guarding, protecting that bag or where he had that gun hidden. So that's why he's blading it away like that in the seated position. And so we know that now, but also if you didn't know that, he's just sitting like a slouch. And so let's keep going. So right here, he reaches back. And so pausing there for a second, the officer is probably observing this. He's probably aware that the guy is turned away and his face is down and he's writing. But whatever the case, obviously we have a warning sign here. And what strikes you is, did she know what was about to happen? Does she, these two knuckleheads, are they, Bonnie and Clyde here? Or are they out doing dope and breaking the law together on a regular basis? Or is she oblivious? From my experience, she's probably just cool like that because this is just her life. This is her everyday, but who knows? And so continuing the video, he's going to turn, going to pull that pistol out. So I'm going to pause right there again. So this is not a guy who just found a gun, in an alley or on the black market. Like, there's some clues here as it's paused that he has had a gun in his hands before. He's got a decent grip. Oh, it's a grainy video. You can't see everything, but he's got a decent grip. His shoulders are square. Like, this guy shot a gun before. And so then you look at the pistol, and it's a semi-automatic handgun with a flashlight, and it could be a $30 Amazon flashlight, or something better, but it has an optic on it. And he is like square shoulders, good grip, two hands, down the sights. There's no question what he meant to do right here. And this is not his first time holding a pistol. So then as the frame is paused here, we'll take a couple other seconds. First of all, our Marine there in the shirt and tie, he's picked up the threat, and he can see his OODA turning. His wheels are processing what's happening. And then our lady, she is just stone cold. Like, what? She's the 1,000-yard stare, and maybe she just hasn't perceived what's happening yet, or whatever. But let's continue the video. So there she notices. She's got the oh dang look on her face. Just after the previous frame where I froze it, he pulled a trigger on an empty chamber or some other malfunction occurred. He's racking the slide here in this freeze frame. Our Marine has changed position. He's getting ready to intervene as this guy's racking the slide. Maybe if it was a magazine seat issue, he did not tap that magazine in well. And so when he racks the slide, who knows what's going to happen. I think if I remember correctly, the magazine is going to go flying across the room. And so maybe a magazine seat issue. And again, I'm sure there's someone out there who knows exactly what happened. I'm just guessing based on this 2-minute video, but whatever the case, look at his face. Like, he knows what he's doing. So let's continue. So he comes up, he's done his malfunction clearance, forgot to tap the magazine though. And this loss prevention associate dives in, grabs the gun. Keep going. And then you see him turn, like he is dead set. So as I've frozen here, the officer is moving to a different position. He's got his back turned to the body-worn camera at the present moment. And whether the suspect is turning to engage and try another shot, or he's just countering the maneuver of our loss prevention associate, whatever the case, he's tracking with that officer. And let's keep going. Still trying to malfunction clearance, or he's trying to get the gun away. Hard to say. Okay. Freeze right there. Our officer has his pistol out. Our loss prevention associate is wrestling for the gun. This is a bad situation for everyone. Lady, one wrong move, that lady stands up. She's in the crossfire of the officer. If the officer engages, there's no good shot on this guy from that angle. And our loss prevention associate's in real danger if the officer fires. So kudos to the officer for his restraint in a very tricky and dangerous situation. And so let's continue. Okay. The loss prevention officer is about to disengage, and the officer is coming in. So comes straight in with a knee bomb. And it looked to me like the gun had already dropped. The loss prevention officer is disengaged. Lady is on her way down the hall. And so, do we love to fight physically hand to hand with a gun in our hand? No, but, none of this situation is great. The circumstances sucked. And so that's what we got. And so a couple of good, righteous knee bombs. Gun goes in the holster. If you notice, it's got a weapon light bearing holster, no weapon light. Just a piece of trivia there. I know they don't fit great in those Safariland SLS holsters without a light, but, lights are expensive. And so keep going. Couple of strikes to soften him up, down to the ground, flattens him out. Loss prevention officer, let's just pause there for a second. Loss prevention officer is going to, do you need my assistance? And so squared away dude there. And you can see just off the left toe of the loss prevention associate is a pistol mag, presumably the bad guy's pistol mag. And we're going to get this guy into handcuffs without much else fuss. And so it's not putting up too great a fight for a guy who just tried to kill a cop. And they put him in handcuffs. No problem. So that's our video. Let's talk a bit more about it. So no surprise that video went viral a couple weeks ago. Both as law enforcement professionals and the public, that is a crazy scene to watch unfold. And so just speaking from a law enforcement perspective, there's a couple of key takeaways. And again, these sorts of situations can go off the rails in an instant, and this is no judgment on the officer. It looked like a very routine call until it wasn't. And so that's the first takeaway, is that routine calls can go off the rails in an instant. We used to call traffic stops routine traffic stops, and the misleading term routine traffic stops set us up for failure in that everything is routine until it's not. Everything is fine. Park this way, walk up, approach at the passenger, the driver's side, whatever you're taught, driver's license, registration, insurance. All of that is routine until it's not. And when you teach that it's routine, you are not preparing for that which is not routine, which is the driver to bolt, or the driver to take off in the car, or the driver to reach out the window and start shooting. So every traffic stop is routine until it's not. And so just like that, every shoplifting response, and I set the stage for this incident from my own perspective, that this was just the most routine call that an officer in a beat area with a Walmart might respond to. A shoplifter in custody at Walmart. It's a daily occurrence. It's several times a day for an officer who has a Walmart or a major retailer like that, with proactive loss prevention. And so it's this, for us, this is a reminder that routine calls can become an escalated situation in an instant. So we need to keep that in mind. And so next thing that comes to mind is the search limitations, or the, what can happen when we miss something on a search. And so, this isn't the case in this situation, but I'll just give you an example. More normal people are walking down the street with a pair of pants, shoes, a shirt, maybe a jacket, a satchel, a wallet, a purse, one carry-on item. And that is just not the world that law enforcement officers are living in when we are making contacts on the street. You are contacting people who are making their lives on the street, who are carrying with them everything they own in a lot of cases, whether that's people who are living on the street, or people who are couch to couch in the dope world. Whatever the case, these people often have 10 layers of clothes. They got a bag over each shoulder. They're carrying a suitcase, and they also have a fanny pack. Every jacket they're wearing has pockets. And so searches are difficult on these sorts of individuals, and we've got to be sharp still. And so we have to go back to our academy training, to our basic training, where we are turning out pockets and we are emptying every single item into bags and everything else, Ziploc bags that is, to just be sure we caught everything. And so that's just the reminder we have here. And so just going back, I didn't see the search in this case, so I'm just speaking generally. That's just our reminder. We have to be thorough. Sometimes what you miss is a gun. And so, and then, next, just the consideration of whether to handcuff when you first get there on an investigative detention like this or not. It'll be driven by what you know at the time as a police officer, but it's important to remember that these things can turn quickly. And so, next takeaway: assistance from bystanders or civilians or loss prevention. And so what I'll say about that is, in this case, it worked out great. Although the officer wasn't able to engage with deadly force, and there was a threat, this one worked out. And I won't say that the loss prevention officer saved the life of the officer. He might have. The officer, had that loss prevention officer not been there, probably would have used deadly force while the suspect was doing his malfunction clearances. And so there were some circumstances there, certainly, that played into the officer not getting shot. So I do believe that the loss prevention officer saved that suspect's life by intervening and changing the circumstances where the officer could not use deadly force. And so, whatever the case, if you're a citizen watching, just use caution. The sentiment is appreciated, but when you insert yourself into a law enforcement situation, especially when it's not in a controlled environment like this, you don't have all the variables. You might get hurt. You might make a bad situation worse. And so that's just a takeaway. And then, just finishing from the takeaway perspective, the officer's decision not to use deadly force, it's in these circumstances, I believe was the best decision he could make. I don't like the idea of shooting in any of the angles you could see from the body cam. The loss prevention officer was bear hugging the guy from the rear, so any round that penetrated was going to strike him as well. There was just not a clear shot at any second. Without the loss prevention officer, he had a good opportunity to use deadly force. Even with the lady sitting there, could she have stood up? And yes. And could he have adjusted for that? Sure. It was the loss prevention officer's presence that made it not possible to take a clean shot. So he had to adjust, and that's what he did. And so I think it was the right call not to shoot him. So demonstrated discipline under stress. And actually in the moments that follow all of this, the officer involved continued to sound calm and collected. And so kudos for that. And so that's my comments on this video. I hope to do more comments on these sorts of videos in the future, but for now, that's it. If you're listening to the podcast and you didn't have access to the video, I encourage you to go find me on YouTube, watch the full video, or just go find this video. There's about 1 billion of them. And so with that, I'm MCNEW, and this is my podcast.